Here's the thing about what Steve Kerr said after the Warriors lost to the Nuggets, and if you don't know what he said, I'll tell you right now. Quote, "I have a problem with the way we are legislating defense out of the game. We're just enabling players to BS their way to the foul line. If I were a fan, I wouldn't have wanted to watch the second half. It was disgusting." This is after Nikola Jokic went 18 for 18 from the free throw line for a Nuggets win on Christmas Day. And so the thing is, Steve Kerr is 100% right, and I'm going to get to a larger point I want to make on that in a minute. But what I will say is that while it was the right message, it was the wrong messenger at the wrong time, talking about the wrong player. Because anytime you have any sort of criticism about like the other team or like the way the refs are operating, and you say that stuff after a loss, it comes off as salty. And for Steve Kerr to say it, a guy who's the coach of a team that's gotten away with a lot of illegal screens over the years and wrapped to their 4 championships, makes it also ring a little bit hollow. And also, when you use Nikola Jokic as sort of the face of your argument, that's also where it loses a bit of steam, because Nikola Jokic, as far as foul baiters go, he's really not one of the most egregious. If Steve Kerr said this after playing a Dallas team or a Philly team, that would make sense. But to sort of pin this on Jokic, whether he meant to do that or not, because I imagine he didn't, but that's sort of how it's going to come off when you start complaining about this stuff after Jokic did it. That's not really fair to Jokic, because he's really not that type of player. In fact, Bam Adebayo just came out on the OG's show with Mike Miller and Udonis Haslem and said he really respects Nikola Jokic because that dude doesn't flop his way to free throws. So again, right message, wrong messenger, wrong time, and wrong subject. But going back to the right message part, Steve Kerr was 100% correct. One of the biggest complaints casual NBA fans have nowadays is that nobody plays defense. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I think guys are just better players than they were in the 90s and 2000s, bigger, stronger, more athletic. Teams are shooting more threes nowadays, so it's just harder to cover all that space on the court. But then the other reason it's so hard to defend is because refs don't let you defend. So many times I watch basketball games and like an offensive player will just barrel into the defense and get a foul call, and I sit there wondering like, what was the defender supposed to do? Or when an offensive player like invades the body, or more specifically the arm space of a defender, to go like up and over their arms to draw a foul. Yes, maybe by letter of the law that's a foul because the opposing player's arms made contact with the guy with the ball. But like I don't understand what defenders are supposed to do, where it's like they literally have to defend with their arms tied behind their back, because that's the only way the offensive player isn't going to make contact with them. And I don't necessarily blame the offensive players for doing this, because at the end of the day, your goal is to win games. Your goal is to win as many games as possible and ultimately try and win a championship. And if there's a way for you to sort of manipulate the rules to give yourself a better chance to do that, do it 100%. It might not look good, but again, like all you care is about the win. So if that helps you do it, you're going to do it. But I blame the refs, and more specifically, I blame the league for, I think, going a bit too far when it comes to promoting offense over defense. One of the big things I always say on Twitter when I see plays like this is like, defenders should be entitled to their space too, right? We always talk about protecting the space of an offensive player, making sure they're allowed to go up without any contact. But like, if I'm a defender, I should also be entitled to certain space. Like, I should be entitled to, if I think a guy's gonna go up for a shot, I should be entitled to be able to give a contest, which, yes, means leaning forward. And if I'm leaning forward, guess what? That's my space now. That shouldn't be the offensive player's space to just take away. Luka Doncic just had this one play where he went up for a fadeaway, pump fake Jeremy Sohan, lean forward to try and contest, as any NBA player, any basketball player would do to contest a shot. And then Luka Doncic leaned in and sort of pushed into him, and somehow that's a foul on Sohan. Like, what is Sohan supposed to do? I totally understand the idea of protecting a player's landing spot, right? Protecting a shooter's landing space. I don't think defenders should be able to just recklessly charge at a guy, and then we have a Zaza Kawhi situation where you're undercutting guys landing on their ankles. That's a good distinction to make. That's a good, the rules that the NBA put in place to call that stuff a flagrant, that was good because that protects the shooter. But now we're just at a point where defenders can't even make a basic contest on a shot, which again constitutes leaning forward to try and contest the shot as well as possible without getting called for a foul. And the NBA has done all this under the guise of, well, more points equals, a better, more entertaining product. It really doesn't, though. I'm all for more scoring and more points, but not like this, man. If you're going to score more points, do it because of your skills in putting the ball in the basket, not in terms of drawing fouls. I don't like free throw contests. They're not fun. I don't like seeing a game come to a grinding halt seemingly every other possession just because teams drew BS fouls. The pace of the current game is what makes it so exciting. Well, free throws sort of cuts down on that pace, a lot. And so the criticism about these fouls is growing more and more. And the only thing we could do is hope that the NBA is actually going to listen this summer. I know this past offseason they talked about getting rid of these kind of fouls for this season, but that hasn't really worked. So hopefully something changes over the summer, because at the end of the day, the NBA only cares about the product and what the product looks like. And right now the product is sort of being tainted when you have some of the best talents the NBA has ever seen, just like do moves, not to necessarily score the ball, but to draw these BS fouls, right? With, again, going under the arms or like just flopping their necks back, expecting a call. Like, instead of playing to score, they're playing to draw fouls. And again, I understand why they do it, because if the refs are going to call it, you should try and get those easy buckets. But I think on the pendulum of like what the NBA wants in terms of offense versus defense, I really do think they need to start scaling back the priorities they have for offense and, just give more rights back to the defenders. And look, maybe that leads to less scoring on both the team and individual level. And maybe that leads to fewer records being broken. But you know what? I think that sacrifice of a few points here or there will ultimately lead to a much better product where, again, guys are actually trying to score the ball instead of just drawing fouls, and you actually feel like defenses have a chance of getting stops instead of feeling like they're hopeless, which is, I know, like how a lot of fans feel right now about their teams.